The press hall in Brussels is bright, lined with EU flags and cameras flashing in unison as President Volodymyr Zelensky steps to the podium. His voice carries a mix of exhaustion and resolve, the tone of a leader fighting not just on the battlefield, but for continued international confidence. He begins by thanking Europe, not just diplomatically, but personally. Today, we are grateful to Finland and Spain for joining this programme, he says, referring to the joint defence and reconstruction initiatives Ukraine has been pressing for months. Air defence systems are very important to us. We paid a lot of attention to this issue. We are grateful to Germany for important decisions, and money is a very important signal. That phrase, a very important signal, sets the tone of his remarks. It's a reminder that in wartime politics, funding is more than finance. It is trust, solidarity, and survival measured in euros and weapon systems. Zelensky's acknowledgement of Finland, Spain, and Germany is deliberate. Each has played a different but vital role. Finland, the newest NATO member, brings frontline experience. Spain, long cautious, signals a shift toward deeper military participation. And Germany, the economic engine of Europe, continues to walk the tightrope between leadership and restraint. Today, we are grateful for the signal that the European Union will financially support Ukraine in 2026 and 2027. Zelensky continues. Thank you for that. His words draw applause, not thunderous, but steady, signalling European acknowledgement of Ukraine's resilience despite growing fatigue across the continent. For months, Kyiv's strategy has depended on maintaining that delicate rhythm of gratitude and urgency. Publicly, Zelensky must show appreciation. Privately, his administration knows the stakes. The EU's multi-year financial package represents a bridge through the uncertainty of US politics, where congressional divisions threaten the flow of American aid. Then comes the line that dominates headlines across the continent. We have never used American weapons at long range for very important purposes on the territory of Russia. This is important. The sentence lands with weight. It is both clarification and reassurance, a direct message to Washington, to NATO capitals, and to Moscow. Zelensky elaborates, we have used various weapons that have good long-range capabilities, but this was strictly in the territory of combat operations or in preparation for corresponding combat missions by the Russian Federation. This distinction matters. For months, US and European officials have wrestled with the question of escalation, whether allowing Ukraine to strike deep into Russia might cross a line that Moscow could use to justify broader retaliation. By stating this publicly, Zelensky is reaffirming discipline. Kyiv is not seeking to provoke, only to defend. Behind his words lies a complex web of diplomacy. American long-range systems like the ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles have been the subject of intense debate since early 2024. Each shipment, each target, each strike is scrutinized by allies and adversaries alike. In Brussels, Zelensky seeks to show that Ukraine's use of such systems remains consistent with Western guidance. But this press conference is about more than weapons. It's about sustaining the war's moral clarity as the conflict enters its fourth year. Across Europe, public opinion has shifted. Support remains, but fatigue grows. Inflation, energy prices, and migration pressures have tested unity. Zelensky's challenge is to remind the EU why the war still matters, because what's at stake is not only territory, but the rules of the international order. As journalists press forward with questions, Zelensky holds his composure. His phrasing is measured, his tone practiced. Yet behind the diplomacy lies fatigue, the weariness of a president who has not known peace in nearly 3 years. The setting itself amplifies the symbolism. The European Council building, marble corridors, flags of 27 nations, represents both support and bureaucracy. Every aid package requires weeks of negotiation, every delivery of weapons, layers of approval. Yet Ukraine's survival depends on keeping this machinery moving. In this sense, Zelensky's trip to Brussels is less about breaking news than about continuity, proving to allies that Kyiv remains transparent, reliable, and aligned with Western expectations. European officials attending the session describe his tone as firm but conciliatory. There are no outbursts, no accusations. Instead, a clear effort to reassure partners that Ukraine remains responsible in its conduct, even under daily bombardment. At the same time, the subtext of his message reaches beyond the room. It is directed at skeptics, both in Europe and in Washington, who question whether further aid will change the course of the war. By emphasizing restraint and accountability, Zelensky reinforces his government's legitimacy and moral standing. The press event follows a morning of closed-door talks with European leaders, where discussions centered on three themes: defense cooperation, economic recovery, and Ukraine's EU accession process. Brussels officials say progress is tangible but slow. Technical reforms, judicial transparency, and anti-corruption benchmarks remain under review. Yet Zelensky's persistence ensures the issue stays on the agenda. His acknowledgement of Germany's important decisions likely refers to Berlin's recent approval of an additional Patriot air defense system and funding for industrial repairs inside Ukraine. These are lifelines for a country where cities live under daily threat of drone and missile attacks. Outside the building, a handful of demonstrators wave blue and yellow flags, chanting in solidarity. Others hold placards calling for faster delivery of weapons and air defense systems. It's a reminder that while leaders debate policy inside conference halls, civilians in Ukraine continue to live with the war's consequences every day. Within Ukraine itself, Zelensky's remarks will be scrutinized closely. Domestic audiences often measure his success not only by Western applause, but by tangible results. How many generators? How much ammunition? How soon new defense systems will arrive? By thanking Europe for its commitment through 2027, Zelensky signals long-term planning, an implicit acknowledgement that the war will not end quickly. He presents this endurance as strength rather than fatigue. For him, securing a multi-year support plan is as vital as any battlefield victory. In diplomatic circles, his comment on the non-use of US long-range weapons is seen as part of a broader effort to stabilize transatlantic relations ahead of next month's NATO ministerial. Washington insiders have quietly encouraged Kyiv to emphasize compliance with existing agreements, particularly as political divisions deepen in the US Congress over continued funding. Across the Atlantic, Zelensky's words will likely resonate in both reassuring and strategic ways. Reassuring because they underscore Ukraine's discipline, strategic because they strengthen Kyiv's case for additional precision strike systems, a subtle argument that responsible use justifies greater trust. The remainder of the press session turns toward reconstruction. Zelensky outlines his vision for European integration not as a distant aspiration, but as a process already underway. Every repaired power plant, every reopened school, he says, is a step toward Europe. His gratitude toward Finland and Spain for joining joint defense programs reflects this vision of shared responsibility. Both nations, once peripheral in Ukrainian affairs, now find themselves central to Europe's security calculus. Reporters note Zelensky's increasingly pragmatic tone. Gone are the fiery pleas of early 2022. In their place, a statesman's vocabulary of partnership and planning. He speaks not only as a wartime leader, but as the architect of Ukraine's eventual recovery. Yet the undercurrent of vulnerability persists. He knows that promises made in Brussels must translate into deliveries on the ground. Pledges of billions mean little without systems that can stop drones over Kyiv or missiles over Odessa. As the press conference winds down, Zelensky's final words carry both gratitude and quiet defiance. The message is clear. Ukraine will continue to fight, but it cannot do so alone. The cameras linger as he steps away from the podium, shaking hands with EU officials. The applause fades into the hum of reporters dictating notes, analysts passing phrases, and security teams moving swiftly through the hallways. Outside, Brussels' autumn sky is grey, a mirror to the uncertainty still hanging over Europe's east. But for a moment, Zelensky's message cuts through the fatigue. Discipline, unity, and endurance remain Ukraine's strongest weapons. As he departs the stage, the essence of his statement remains, not a declaration of victory, but a reaffirmation of principles. Ukraine fights within its borders. It abides by the boundaries set by its allies, and it does so not out of weakness, but out of respect for the collective stability it seeks to defend. In that careful balance between gratitude and determination, Zelensky continues to navigate one of the most complex diplomatic terrains in modern European history, where every word, every gesture, and every reassurance may determine the future of his nation.